So a lot of big headlines coming out today, a lot of developments coming out with, take a look at this. Hegseth has ordered an urgent meeting of top generals and admirals. This is coming out today, September the 25th. Hegseth is said to have summoned U.S. military brass from around the globe. The unusual directive, without the stated reason, came after the defense secretary fired several top officers and ordered a reduction in four-star officers. Many are saying that we could be preparing for war here. Hegseth orders hundreds of military commanders to Virginia for an unprecedented meeting. Now, this comes as well earlier today. I shared with you, take a look at this. The U.S. scrambled jets after Russian warplanes entered international airspace in Alaska. We saw those warplane bombers entering, they said it was international waters along Alaska. That came out this morning. Apparently that took place yesterday. And take a look at this. NATO, EU have declared war on Russia through Ukraine. Lavrov claims coming out today. A lot of these headlines here you can see, actually I think all of them coming out today. NATO is at war with Russia, says the Kremlin, as drone incursions continue in Europe. Live updates. The Economic Times reports Russia threatens World War III if NATO attacks its combat jets. Lavrov says the U.S.-led military alliance and EU declared war on my country, and there are threats coming out to the United States as well. Nuclear threats. Actually, let's take a look at this headline lower down here. 8 minutes ago, Putin ally fires nuclear warning at Trump's United States. So threats coming out directly to the U.S. as well. Things are intensifying today. And as I shared with you, I believe this one was yesterday, if I remember correctly, Russia says there is no choice but war. After Trump U-turned on Ukraine, he said, we are going the direction of war. And as you can see from the headlines coming out, it is intensifying. It's getting really intense right now. Russia foreign minister says Moscow is in a real war with NATO, Europe. Take a look at this. Netanyahu's jet largely avoids European airspace in unusual route to New York. They're saying just stay away from where there's potential conflict about to erupt. And the EU chief slams Russian aggression that threatens every nation at this time. And that is, we are hearing that we could potentially be going to war here, including the United States. And that's what a lot of people are saying. Hey, why is it that all of these generals and admirals are meeting in an urgent meeting on September 30th? What is taking place undisclosed? They're not giving the information as to what is going on. Let me know your thoughts if you think we are about to go to war. And we, I mean the United States, potentially global war with NATO, Russia. Put war in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Now, if you think, no, we're going to be able to stave off war, put peace. But I'm going to share with you the latest headlines coming out today, September the 25th, 2025. We've got a lot going on. And Dan Lutzka, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. What's so civil about war anyway? Civil War from Guns N' Roses. Great song. Thank you for that $10 super chat and that song reminder. Now, we're going to dive into this, and as I mentioned to you, I cite all the sources, so I'm going to have these put on the screen. I'm going to read right from them, hyperlink it down below so you can click them, go read them for yourself. Now, if you appreciate the updates, keeping you up to speed on all the breaking news, and that I cite all the sources so you can see it, do me a favor before we dive in, hit that thumbs up like button. That simple gesture just takes a second, really helps out the live stream a ton while we are live here, just spreads it out across the YouTube platform. And to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not hit the subscribe button? There is a lot going on right now, so you're going to want to stay up to date because it looks like we potentially could be entering into some serious war and conflict here. Things are getting pretty intense, so to stay up to date, hit the subscribe button. This is my second live stream today. Might need to start switching to multiple with all the news coming out, but let's go ahead and dive in. Excuse me. So that way we can take a look at the latest, and I see people putting war in the comments. World War III is pouring in. Yes, that is what we are hearing is the direction that we are going. So let's take a look at this one. Hegseth is said to have summoned U.S. military brass from around the globe. The unusual directive, without a stated reason, came after the defense secretary fired several top officers and ordered a reduction in four-star officers. It says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has summoned scores and perhaps hundreds of generals and admirals from around the world to meet on short notice next week at a Marine Corps base in Virginia but has not disclosed the reason for the gathering, four U.S. officials said on Thursday today. So we do not know why this urgent emergency meeting is taking place. And just to clarify, this has never happened before. The unusual directive, which has been filtering its way through military commands and the undisclosed rationale, has stirred anxiety and concern among the military's top ranks in a period when Mr. Hegseth has fired several senior officers, the New York Times writes. And that is the end of the article for me, because I'm not going to pay $1 per week to get the full article. But let's take a look at Fox News here and see what they have to say on this. Hegseth orders hundreds of military commanders to Virginia for unprecedented meeting. Highly unusual gathering comes as War Secretary Hegseth wants to cut 20% of senior officers. Now, the article says the Pentagon next week is convening a meeting of top U.S. military leaders from across the globe. Now, multiple War Department officials confirmed to Fox News that top military commanders, they had been asked to fly to Virginia for a meeting next week. So just to clarify too, meeting in person, though the topic of discussion is unclear. The Pentagon confirmed the meeting but did not offer details. The Secretary of War will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week, Chief Spokesperson Sean Parnell said in a statement. Now, a meeting of this size and scope is highly unusual and would usually take place on a secure video teleconference. Around 800 generals and admirals are spread across the U.S. and the world. What are they now? Thank you so much for that $20 super chat. Appreciate your generosity. Reading on, the article says, the lack of details surrounding the gathering has some fearing a looming purge. War Secretary Pete Hegseth has previously said that he wants to cut up 20% of the senior generals and admirals. The order, first reported by the Washington Post, applies to senior officers with the rank of brigade general and above, or the Navy equivalent of their top enlisted advisors. Now, in May, Hegseth had issued a directive to slash about 100 generals and admirals, along with a minimum 20% cut for star officers. He ordered an additional 10% reduction in general and flag officers across the military. So maybe it's just a purging of the staff. Let me know your thoughts. The secretary called the reductions part of this less generals, more GLs policy. Now, according to the Hegseth, there are currently 44 four-star and flag officers across the military, making a ratio of 1 general to 1,400 troops compared to a ratio during World War II of 1 general for 6,000 troops. Now, it comes as the administration officials have been preparing for a new national defense strategy that makes homeland defense a top priority, where the strategy had long had a focus on pivoting to the Indo-Pacific. That strategy is expected to guide the global force posture review that could see major changes to the positioning of the United States troops at bases across the globe. So right now that is taking place. And meanwhile, I shared with you earlier today that we had seen the U.S. scrambled jets after a Russian warplane entered international airspace near Alaska. And this is very timely, because we had literally just heard Donald Trump tell NATO nations that if their airspace is invaded again, like we saw with Poland, Estonia, Romania, he said, shoot them down. And we heard that European leaders were saying, we will shoot them down. And now take a look at what's happening in Alaska in the United States. Love Life, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Trump better rethink his strategy. Russia is not Iraq or Afghanistan. With Trump's and Graham's actions, you will definitely need Steve's iodine pills. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Love Life. And let me know if you agree in the comments with Love Life. If you agree, put yes. If you don't agree, put no. Sounds like he does not agree. Love Life doesn't like Trump's strategy. So if you agree with Love Life, put yes. If you don't agree, put no. Let me know your thoughts. And thanks again for that super chat. Now, reading the article, it says the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, scrambled fighter jets on September 24th yesterday to identify a Russian aircraft that entered the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone, according to a statement. The news follows a series of recent Russian airspace violations involving drones and fighter jets breaching the border of multiple NATO member states. NORAD, a joint body guarding the airspace over the U.S. and Canada, dispatched an E-3, 4 F-16s, and 4 KC-135 tankers to track 2 Russian Tu-95 bombers and 2 Su-35 fighter jets. So what we're hearing is that these were actual warplane bombers that were coming near Alaska. The Russian aircraft remained in international airspace and did not enter the sovereign airspace of the U.S. or Canada, according to the statement. NORAD emphasized that such encounters are routine and are not viewed as a threat. Now, the ADIZ is a section of international airspace where countries require aircraft to provide identification, to monitor, and to protect national security. Russian aircraft frequency entered the ADIZ with another similar incident report on August 27th, when the U.S. scrambled fighter jets in preparation for a potential interception. In late August, NORAD reported that it had detected and tracked a Russian military reconnaissance aircraft inside the ADIZ, the fourth such incident in just a few days, following 3 earlier interceptions of similar spy planes in the region. These events underscore the enduring geopolitical friction in the Arctic, a region of growing strategic interest for both Russia and NATO. Now, in early September, Poland shot down several Russian drones that had entered its airspace, marking the first time NATO forces have downed a Russian drone since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russian fighter jets subsequently entered Estonian airspace, and Denmark intercepted unidentified drones near an airport for the second time in a week. Speaking alongside President Volodymyr Zelensky at the UN General Assembly on September 23rd, U.S. President Donald Trump urged NATO countries to shoot down Russian drones that violated their airspace. The recommendation received support from some officials in Poland and Estonia, who welcomed a firmer stance against the incursion. So we had seen this happening in the United States as well. You can see this coming out September the 26th, Friday, which is tomorrow, because it's coming out from a foreign news media outlet for Kiev, Ukraine. Now, take a look as well. Declared war. NATO and the EU have declared war on Russia through Ukraine. Lavrov claims this coming out today. So, man, a lot of headlines really intensifying what could be potential war here. NATO and the EU have declared war on Russia through Ukraine, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed at a G20 foreign ministers meeting on September 25th today. Lavrov's remarks come amid rising tensions between Russia and NATO following recent violations of the alliance's airspace by Russian drones and fighter jets. Russia's chief diplomat reiterated the Kremlin's long-standing narrative that the West provoked the war in Ukraine and said NATO and the EU had moved beyond indirect support and were now parties to the war. His comments echoed a similar statement made by Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on September 15th, who said that NATO is at war with Russia due to ongoing military support for Kiev. Peskov's comments came days after Poland shot down Russian drones that entered its airspace. Following multiple Russian airspace violations across NATO member states, U.S. President Donald Trump said allies should shoot down Russian aircrafts breaching their airspace, a position backed by several European officials. In response, Russian ambassador to France, Alexei Meshkov, warned on September 25th today that such actions by NATO would amount to war against Russia. Poland shot down at least 3 Russian drones that entered its airspace on September 10th. While a few days later, Romania reported a Russian drone flying over its territory for nearly an hour. On September 19th, Estonia accused Russia of violating its airspace with 3 MiG-31 fighter jets, which remained in Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. A recent surge in Russian airspace violations and other provocations on NATO territory, including disinformation campaigns, has heightened concern in the West over the risk of a broader Russian military escalation. So right now, NATO and the EU declared war on Russia, says Mr. Lavrov. NATO is at war with Russia, says the Kremlin, as the drone incursions continue in Europe. You can see another article covering the details of this, as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Thursday, per a public telegram board, that NATO and the European Union are waging war against Russia, using Ukraine as a proxy, and are directly participating in this conflict. Lavrov's comments follow repeated Kremlin claims that Western military and financial support for Ukraine amounts to direct hostility towards Russia. The announcement also comes amid repeated drone incursions into NATO ally airspace. NATO warned Russia on Tuesday that it was prepared to defend every inch of Allied territory after Estonia said that the Russian fighter jets had violated its airspace last week. The incursion followed a similar incident in Poland earlier this month, where around 20 drones from Moscow entered Polish airspace. Just this week, Denmark reported multiple drone incidents at critical infrastructure points as a Russian landing ship was discovered lurking off the Danish coast. Now, here's what to know. NATO and the EU members, they have not formally entered a war. So Russia is saying that they have declared war against them. They're saying it has not been officially announced, but that might be changing here very soon. Lavrov accused NATO and the EU of declaring war on Russia via Ukraine. He claimed both alliances are directly participating in this conflict. The statement was made on Thursday on a Telegram board today. Russia has previously framed Western support for Ukraine as aggression. Now, take a look at this one coming out today as well. Putin allies fires nuclear warning at Trump's U.S. So the United States also getting caught into the mix of this, and that is the concern. Where are we going to be going from here regarding potential war involving the United States? Top Kremlin official Dmitry Medvedev issued a fiery nuclear warning to the United States after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said officials in Moscow should learn where their nearest bomb shelter is if they don't end Russia's war. Zelensky, in an interview with Axios, said U.S. President Donald Trump had given him explicit backing to the Ukrainian strikes on Russia targets such as energy infrastructure and arms factories, and that if Kiev receives more long-range American weaponry, then we will use it. The Kiev drug addict said the Kremlin should know where a bomb shelter is so its occupants can hide when he uses long-range American weapons. Medvedev, who is deputy chairman of the Russian President Vladimir Putin on the Kremlin Security Council and is himself a former president and prime minister of Russia, said in an X post, "What the freak needs to know is that Russia can use weapons a bomb shelter won't protect against. Americans should also keep this in mind." Wow. There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'll read that one again. What the freak, talking about Zelensky, needs to know is that Russia can use weapons that a bomb shelter won't protect against, and Americans should also keep this in mind as well. What do you think the response to this should be? That is very aggressive rhetoric regarding their nuclear weapons, and that is why we're seeing this coming out today. Putin ally fires nuclear warning at Trump's U.S. Now, also coming out here, you can see today as well, Russia threatens World War III if NATO attacks its combat jets. Lavrov says the U.S.-led military alliance and EU declare war on my country. Roger, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. He says the U.S. will be into a big problem with the stupid egg Seth. Thank you for that super chat. I appreciate that. We're going to be seeing what that meeting with Hegseth has to do with. Now, they said they have not given the reason for it. As soon as we find out why this urgent emergency U.S. meeting is going on, I'll be sure to let you know. A lot of people speculating that we could be preparing for potential war. Some saying it is, as you saw before, maybe a purging, cutting down of the staff on board. But whatever the case is, we're hearing that they are calling their generals and admirals from all around the United States and the globe. Now, let's go and take a look at this. At the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting held alongside the United Nations General Assembly in New York on September 25th today, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov escalated Moscow's rhetoric by accusing the U.S.-led NATO alliance and the European Union of having already declared a real war on my country and being directly involved in it through military and political support for Ukraine. Now, Lavrov asserted that the West has moved beyond indirect involvement and is now participating directly in the conflict, repeating the Kremlin's long-standing claim that Western support for Kiev constitutes de facto war. He blamed the collective West for providing the Ukraine crisis describing it as a manifestation of neo-colonial ambitions that fuel global instability and multiple regional conflicts. The foreign minister also linked the escalation in Ukraine to other global conflicts, citing the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and ongoing crises in Africa as symptoms of what he describes as the West's failure to adhere to the United Nations Charter. So, man, fighting words coming out with that meeting that took place with the UN. And, man, they are warning about all-out World War III major attacks. And as you saw before, saying America should be concerned about the bombs that Russia has, that a bomb shelter will not protect you from. Wow. Now, take a look at this coming out here. Russia says they have no choice but war after Trump U-turns on Ukraine. I believe this was yesterday, and we are now seeing it going this direction. It says Kremlin also says U.S.-Russia rapprochement yields close to zero results as fear grows in Europe and Ukraine spill over. Yes, this coming out yesterday. It says the Kremlin has announced that it has no alternative but to continue waging war as it pushes back on the United States President Donald Trump's sudden sea change towards Ukraine that saw him brand Russia as a paper tiger. We've seen the response to this. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov hit back at Trump's claims that Ukraine could in effect win the war, declaring on Wednesday yesterday that Russia would be continuing its offensive on Ukraine to ensure our interests and achieve the goals. We are doing this for both the present and the future of our country, for many generations to come. Therefore, we have no alternative, he said in a radio interview with Russian RBC radio station. Tuesday had seen Trump throw his weight behind Ukraine after a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, posting on social media that the country was in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form, signaling his rapprochement with Russia was over. The U.S. president said, Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. So Trump slamming Russia's military abilities. Russia's war was making it look like a paper tiger with a failing economy, Trump said. Now, on Wednesday, Peskov pushed back against Trump's paper tiger remark, insisting Russia was more of a bear, though he conceded that the economy, which is slowing after 3 years of rapid growth and with stubborn inflation, was facing some headwinds. He said that it was wrong to think that Ukraine could recapture land taken by Moscow's army. The idea that Ukraine can recapture something is, from our point of view, mistaken, he said. Now, the Kremlin spokesperson also poured scorn on Trump's attempts for rapprochement, which saw him welcome Russian President Vladimir Putin to a summit in Alaska last month, saying it had yielded close to zero results. So they are pushing back here. They are pushing back here, and they are saying, hey, the efforts that you've made, it is worthless. Donald Trump met up with Putin in Alaska. They said it yielded close to zero results. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this as we're hearing that they are saying we are about to enter into real war here. And I'm taking a look at the comments. Sorry, I got distracted. I was reading the comments. I see people mentioning that they feel like we are going to be heading to war. If you agree, put war in the comments, and do me a favor. We've got over 6,500 people while we're live. If you haven't done so yet, please take a second, hit the like button. It helps out a ton. If we could get half of the room to hit the like button, get that up over 3,000 while we're live, that would be amazing. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this article coming out from Politico. It says, Russian foreign minister says Moscow is in a real war with NATO and Europe. President Donald Trump proclaimed empathetically early this week that Kiev could win the war and earn back all of its territory. Russia not happy with those statements. Now, in addition to that, we also saw that Trump had said that they could win the war, take back their territory, and that NATO should shoot down Russian planes. So Russia not happy, as a lot of this was very much so anti-Russia, what Trump had to say. Coming out today, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, on Thursday suggested that his country is at war with NATO and the European Union over Ukraine, as President Donald Trump rethinks his approach to ending the conflict Russian President Vladimir Putin started more than 3 years ago. NATO and the European Union want to declare, in fact, have already declared a real war on my country and are directly participating in it, Lavrov said in comments translated by TASS, Russia's state-owned media agency, at a G20 ministerial conference on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Now, his comments come just days after Trump, fresh off of a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, backed off his pressure for the two countries to find a diplomatic solution to the conflict. Saying that Russia resembled a paper tiger, he proclaimed emphatically his belief that Kiev could win the war and reclaim all of its territory. Trump also told reporters NATO countries should be empowered to shoot down Russian drones that traverse over their airspace. So again, getting very anti-Russia with his comments. Now, with time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started, is very much an option, Trump wrote Tuesday on Truth Social. Why not? Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. Lavrov on Wednesday met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who urged Moscow to take meaningful steps towards a durable resolution to the war and to reiterate Trump's call for an end to the bloodshed, according to the State Department readout. Now, also, this coming out here, that Israel, Netanyahu, they are just avoiding Europe altogether with concerns about potentially what could be going on in the airspace. Netanyahu's jet largely avoided European airspace in an unusual route to New York. The Israeli Prime Minister traveling to the UN General Assembly took a longer route. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government jet flew Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government jet flew an unusual route from Tel Aviv to New York Thursday, largely avoiding European airspace. Netanyahu, traveling to the United Nations General Assembly, briefly flew over Greece and Italy, but then took a circuitous route across the Mediterranean, directly over the Strait of Gibraltar, and then across the Atlantic, according to Flight Radar 24 records viewed by ABC News. The unusual route added more than 2 hours to the Prime Minister's flight time, the records show. In previous U.S. trips, Netanyahu's jet has just flown over Greece, a large swath of Italy, before crossing the entire length of France. And here you can see the path traveled, and it could be concerns about entering that airspace right now with all the conflict that is taking place. Coming out of Tel Aviv, going across, dipping down, going between Africa and Spain, the Rock of Gibraltar, and then flying across the Atlantic to New York. That is the path that we saw them take. And it could be they are concerned about where we're going with war. As we are seeing, headlines like this, EU chief slams Russian aggression that threatens every nation. European Council President Antonio Costa denounced Russian aggression and pushed for Ukraine's right to choose its own destiny. Wow. So there you have it, you guys. A lot unfolding today. We have urgent meetings coming out for top generals to come together. We're also hearing that the United States had to address Russian warplane bombers that entered near Alaska. NATO and the EU have declared war on Russia. We're hearing today from Lavrov, and we're going to be seeing where we go from here. A lot unfolding today. September the 25th, 2025. Are we going to be entering into World War III? If you think so, drop WW3 in the comments. But literally reading here on some of these articles that we have not been in a situation like this since World War II. And we know that they've initiated Article 5 when we saw airspace violated for, I believe it was Estonia. We're going to be seeing if Article 4 was initiated. We're going to see if they're going to enter into Article 5, which is all the NATO nations coming together and defending against the threat, which is Russia, and the United States potentially getting pulled into this as well. I'm seeing WW3s pouring into the comments. And also, if you haven't done so yet, please hit the like button. Just need, looks like 25 more likes to get 1,900 while we're live. 7,500 people on with me right now with the breaking news coming out today that U.S. Pete Hegseth, They are scrambling right now to get top generals over in an emergency meeting. We're hearing that the NATO and EU have declared war on Russia, according to Lavrov's announcement today. And we're going to see what unfolds. Now, as more comes out, I'll be sure to share here on the channel, let you guys know exactly what is taking place. I'm going to cite the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it, so you know the latest. Again, hit the like button if you appreciate it. Subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. And somebody mentioned the iodide potassium tablets. I haven't mentioned those in a while, but I always say here on the channel, don't be scared, be prepared. This is not meant to give you fear, but is meant to give you knowledge of what is going on. And the true knowledge is the application of knowledge. So if you want to prepare, I've got a list of items down below, and one of those is, as mentioned, those iodide potassium tablets. I think it's like $15 on Amazon. You can get yourself a pack. If you've got small kids or older adults, there's a pack for $20 that is good for all ages, and that is just if you have radiation exposure. You can take those iodide potassium tablets, protects parts of your body that could get full or absorbed. I can't remember what it is. I think it's your thyroid with the waste from the radiation. So anyways, various items down below to consider in the description. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll continue to keep you up to date as more unfolds. God bless. Take care. This is Steve.